Hey everybody, happy Thursday. I'm recording this message on a Thursday afternoon. Um, I am so sorry that we couldn't have our big department meeting last week, and I'm not going to be able to have it this week either. So I just wanted to give you a few little updates and things that are happening so you have the information. So I decided to do a one-woman Zoom recording so that we could do that. If you're listening and you're like, well, what about? Well, what about? Put your questions in an email and we'll get them answered for you. So I'm sorry that we don't have that interaction option this time, but I wanted to make sure and get this information out. We're going to talk with about 5 things today. We have a couple of sort of housekeeping items, and so I will share those with you. We're going to talk about reimbursements and budgets, a few things about the progress report option that I sent out the other day, and then some of the summer stuff, including ESY. And I wanted you to have some background on that crazy survey email that you got the other day, so you kind of know what that's about. And then we're going to talk about some transition stuff. So that's the agenda. So let's just go ahead and get started. So one thing that you kind of need to remember is that even though we're in dismissal, some of the operating things of the district haven't changed. So one of those is there's typically a cutoff in May for when you can submit receipts, because they have to be reimbursed to you before the fiscal year for the district is over, and the fiscal year for the district is over on the 30th of June. So as you know, those reimbursements don't just happen overnight. There's a whole process that has to go through, Liliana, and then it has to go to purchasing, and then it has to be approved again by me and all. Anyway, it's a multi-layered deal. So basically Liliana can't take receipts anymore. I'm going to forward you an email that she wrote to have me send out just the other day, because we won't be able to take them out of this year's budget because there just won't be time. So I realized that we weren't able to give you a warning about that, which we would normally do, but this is crazy town. So that didn't happen. So you need to, she can't take any more. They won't be done in time. And then, so lots of people have asked about their budgets rolling over if they have money left over. Right now, we're going to kind of hold on to that money a little bit, and I'll tell you why. Because as you may or may not know, in the February or so, there were lots of funding initiatives made by the legislature, like education initiatives that had funding attached to them. And overall, it was going to be one of the more significant increases in funding in Utah that we've ever seen in education. So that felt really good at the moment. However, now, because of the impact of COVID, a lot of that funding is not going to come our way. In fact, they are instructing districts to get ready for 3 different scenarios. One is a 2% cut, one is a 5% cut, and one is a 10% cut. So we're just kind of, I guess, bracing for impact when it comes to a budget cut. And of course, the last thing we want to do is have to lose people. So we will probably be looking at, so for example, certain things that that are not going to happen is like anything extra, right? So sometimes they send people to conferences or whatever, and we don't typically do that because we don't have the money. And you use IDE funds that way anyway. So so things like that have been all suspended in the district just so that we can have some extras, because what they've told the districts across the state is that you need to plan that next year's budget would be exactly the same as this year's budget, and then the cut will come from that. So it's a little bit scary. So we're going to hold off on rolling over any budget money from this year to next year and kind of keep it so we can soften the blow of some of those things. Because I'd rather cut materials on some level than have to not have as many paras or what have you. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now. And we were kind of already operating in the red as a special ed department, which many of you already knew. So it could get a little bit dicey for us. So that's what's happening there. So anyway, that's an update for you. We also, you got the link to the progress report, and there's been a bunch of questions about, like, if I'm a related server, do I fill it out on the same one of my teachers? And I just think that's too confusing. So IT knows that some kids might have multiple progress reports because the teacher's going to fill one out, and then the speech person's going to fill one out, and then maybe OT or PT is going to fill one out. So those children will have 3 things that we put in an envelope, and that's okay. Because it's just right now, you just need to take the kids that you are required to provide progress on, and you click that link and you report progress on that student and those goals. And then, you know, we'll worry about making sure they all get into the right envelopes and get mailed out and all that kind of stuff. Just a reminder that if you choose to do something different, which you are more than welcome to do, if you want to use your own progress report or all those kinds of things, then you need to be able to problem solve getting them to the parents, right? So getting them printed and getting them sent or emailed to parents. We've got so much going on that's coming up. There's just no way I can't get an email from a person who's like, well, I printed my own, but now I don't have postage, or I don't have envelopes and I can't get into my school, or whatever it is. You're just going to need to problem solve that, because we've provided an option for you that doesn't require you to do any of that. So I'm just, you know, putting my, you know, the skills I can't use with my teenagers very well to the to the test, and I'm just telling you, you can choose your own thing, but then you're kind of on your own. So that's what I want to say about the progress report. The other thing is, if you fill out the progress report, I can't really get you back into the same progress report to change something. So be careful while you're doing it, because it's not like those forms stay as forms, right? The information goes into a spreadsheet that then we use to populate the document. So we can't be making changes for 250 people. So just be careful as you're filling those out so that we can get those sent out. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about the summer. So let's see, I'm trying to think of how long ago it was. Well, long story, it's sort of a long story, but when we went to orange from red, then the USBE sent out some guidance about things that LEAs could consider doing, like whenever, you know, bringing kids in for testing, or possibly bringing kids in for small group and things like that. However, they had all the same safety stipulations: adults wearing masks, 6 feet of social distancing, and different things. Like, all of those requirements are still there. You have to have groups of only 2 or 3 per teacher. You have to have one way to get into the building and one way to get out, and then some way to screen symptoms so that symptomatic people don't come into the building. And then you have to take measures for sanitation between groups. So that guidance came out, and we were kind of waiting to see where the districts were going to go. Some districts did decide to do those things. Our problem, well, we have a couple of problems. um, the students that we need to bring in the most, who are experiencing the most regression, are the students that we could not maintain those safety standards. So they are students that require that we touch them because we're doing feeding or toileting, or because of their behavior, someone has to be right there next to them, or they require hand-over-hand prompting to access vape, or a myriad of things, right? And if we can't meet the safety precautions, we can't bring kids in. Those are also the parents that our school board is hearing from about the difficulty of the remote learning and how their kids are not always able to access that without so much support that parents can't give it all the time, and things like that, which is absolutely 100% true. And they should be telling the school board what this has been like for them, so that the school board has our kids on their radar, right, as planning moves forward. So then, the other thing you need to know is that the governor keeps saying that any day now, Salt Lake County will be yellow. And one of the stipulations under yellow is opening schools. So I have been talking to different district leaders and to school board leaders, and we have decided that in June, we would like to attempt to open the school buildings and provide some services to kids in those groups of 2 or 3 with a teacher. So obviously that's not going to apply to every group of students, because some of them, the rule is always that we maintain the guidance that we've received from USBE and the health department. So any group that we cannot abide those guidelines, we can't bring in person yet. But those guidelines might change a little when we go to yellow. So we're looking at starting smaller with whatever we can do, and then having a plan for scaling that up should something change and we can bring other groups into the buildings. And student safety and health is always the top priority. Now, we decided not to try to do it during the school year for a variety of reasons. Number one, school's in dismissal till the last day. Number two, you guys are already working really hard, and it took a minute for me to help people understand that because right now what this will look like is a more mild, moderate population of students will be what we can bring in right this minute. So what I was trying to explain to everybody is you guys have caseloads, depending on where you are, anywhere from 25 to 40 kids. And so if you have 25 kids and you can only bring 2 or 3 of them in, what are the other 22 kids doing? And you've set up all these routines, right? For your kids know at 10 o'clock, I Zoom with so-and-so or whatever it is. And so it would upend all of that. And then it just felt really complicated. Like, we already stopped providing your traditional services to do these online services. And then out of nowhere, we're going to do something completely different again. And so I said, absolutely not. We are not doing that right now. That would be crazy town. And so it's just not feasible or doable, nor does it really make any sense to me. So I did say, but once the school year is over and we have an end in place, we could be prepared then to start some of our summer activities with students whose parents are willing and for whom we can maintain all those safety standards. So that's where this is coming from. And everybody wants to know what it looks like, but until I know who is willing to work in the summer and provide services to kids, I can't tell you what it looks like. And I know some of you are probably thinking to yourself, well, until I know what it looks like, I don't know if I'm willing. So here's what I want to say about that. Number one, there is no pressure at all on anyone to work in the summer. If you do not want to do it, you just check no and we go on our merry way. And you do not have to feel bad about that. Like people, this has been really hard. And frankly, if I had a contractual option to check no for the summer, I just might do it because we're tired. It's exhausting and everyone's having a different experience. And if you need the summer to gear up for what this may or may not look like in the fall, then you take it, right? And you do not need to worry that people will think you don't care about your students or what have you. So there's that. Okay, so this is a no pressure question. I just honestly need to know who would be willing to do it and who wouldn't, because then we can make a plan together, because we'll include you in what that may or may not look like. We're kind of envisioning something along the lines of like a morning session with a group of 2 to 3, and depending on, you know, what students are, whose parents are willing to bring them in you might have a little reading session, you might have a math session. And so the group of 2 to 3 might change, but we're kind of picturing maybe a morning session, possibly an afternoon session. I don't know. So what we will do is we will bring, once we know who's willing and when, we can kind of calendar out what our options are. Like these 3 people said they would work for 2 weeks in June, then that gives me some information. So then I will contact you and say, you know, what about this? What about this? What about this? If at any time you change your mind, you can tell me no. If we start getting into it and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not interested in that, then you can say, you know, I get it, but that is not what I'm interested in doing, and we'll move on to the next thing. So I don't want you to worry too much. I just really need to know who's willing to do what. So fill that out, and that will help us know where we need to start. And so we set a target start date of June 9th, and there's a whole bunch of things in the works right now as far as, you know, buildings, but that's kind of part of what I need to know is who's willing to work, so we can figure out which buildings we might be able to open. It may include, just so some caveats, based on who we have coming and who from your building is willing to come in as far as kids go, there may be some mixing, right? So there may be kids from other buildings that come to be in groups. So you may not have just your own kids. There may be some other kids that we are providing support to. Depending on what facility says, we may be in our typical buildings. That's kind of what I am picturing, but there might have to be an option where people are not. We also have families that are interested in services, but they don't want to bring their kids in. So that's why we asked if you'd be willing to do virtual work with kids, different things like that. So it could look a million ways. We have some ideas, but we will ask the people who have volunteered about those ideas, and then we will get something set up. And then there will be protocols, right, of how close the groups are together time-wise, so that there is time to wipe things down and different things like that. There will be a protocol if for some reason Utah goes back to red, then it just disbands. So it could be like a Tuesday, and that night the governor says we're red, so then Wednesday nobody's coming in. So we will have that flexibility, will have to be part of it, and parents are just going to have to understand that that's going to be part of it. So if they sign up to come, they'll be signing up for that. One good thing is that once we are back together with those particular students, if we can assess them and we feel comfortable with the results we're getting of those more like classroom-based assessments, so maybe we do some fluency measures, we check some comprehension, and if we feel like it's a good measure of what that child can do, then we can say to a parent, you know, this portion of this is going to count as some of your child's compensatory services. And even if it doesn't, anything we can do now that gets kids in a better place is going to mean less compensatory services later. So that's positive. So you may have mixed feelings about this. I'm sure you do. You know, there are people who are vehemently against us doing anything like this of any kind, and I can completely appreciate that. However, I've been directed by the superintendent and the school board that this is what we need to be prepared to do. So I am moving forward with that. And I love your feedback, but if you're just going to tell me this is stupid, I will just tell you that my emotional space right now is that this is what I've been asked to do. And I don't need people to be like rainbows and unicorns about it, but your opinion about if you think this is a horrible plan and unsafe doesn't change anything for me. And I would love it if you would just share that with another person at your house or a rock garden or a colleague in your building. You can say that Shelly Halverson is crazy. We should not be doing this. And I've thought that to myself a couple of times. And so I'm just asking that for me, that I don't have the emotional bandwidth to argue with people about whether or not this is a good idea. Because this is what I have been directed to do. And so I am going to move forward and I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm rambling now. The problem with no other people on the screens, I just talk forever. So I just need you to do that for me because I feel raw about it too. But I have to focus on getting it ready. And so yeah, if you could just, you can talk about me and you can say it's all horrible, and I am fine with that. I just kind of don't need to hear it right now. If I could say that like that. So part of the summer thing is ESY, which we are required to do whether we can do it in person or not. So many of you who have kids qualified for ESY, by the way, if you are a mild moderate teacher that has a child qualified for ESY, I need you to email me immediately the name of that student. It doesn't happen as often, but it does happen. I know of one at Emerson, so Tisha, you don't need to email me. And then, but we need to know who those kids are because we will likely be able to do their ESY in person, and so I need to be ready for that. Essential elements, folks, Jessica has already reached out to you and asked you some questions about what students' needs are that require like physical touch or close proximity of an adult. If we have students that we cannot social distance from at this time, those students will have to receive online ESY until we are able to provide that in person. I am guessing that we may not be able to at all this summer, but I don't know that for sure. And so what we will do, Jessica has that information from you, and so we will start contacting you with which we will look at who can do it in person, and then we will have a couple of people assigned to do in person. Because I don't think at the moment it will be very many. And then everyone else will provide it virtually to their families and that they're assigned to. And then we will have a plan for if it changes and we can start bringing kids in person, then things might shift around a little bit as we scale up who's coming into the building. And we will have everybody routed on the bus already. We will have all of that done so that if that happens and we contact a parent and they're willing, we could start quickly. So that's the plan right now. So once Jessica and I have time to comb, well, we'll be doing it really soon. I don't want you to think we're putting this off, but we will comb through that data in the next few days. And then we will send all of you that signed up to teach ESY your list of kids. We're not going to ask you to do two things. We're not going to ask you to do in person and virtual. So you will have either a virtual assignment or an in-person assignment. So that's kind of how that's going to roll, because we have to provide that whether they can come into the building or not. So there's that. So that's kind of what that is going to look like. Okay, I think that's all I needed to tell you about that. So I know that that email was kind of out of nowhere, which I would have prepped you for had we had our meeting, but you know, in some ways I get excited about the prospect of kids in front of teachers, and then I get nervous. So I'm kind of all over the place. I can see the benefit for us PR wise, and that, I mean, it really is better for kids to be in front of their teachers. So there's all of that. So I'm kind of all over the map about it, but I'm moving forward. The school board is very supportive. I had to present to the school board on Wednesday night. Some of you saw it. I think it doesn't matter if you saw it or not. Just this, again, my big face on a screen. So, I mean, and they were understanding of why we can't just do it now, because originally, like, they wanted us to start Tuesday, and I was like, so that's not going to happen. So anyway, they understand kind of what we're up against, and they understand the prioritization of health and safety first. So, but I agree with them on the fact that if we can start, we should probably start somewhere rather than doing nothing, because we can't do everything, which is kind of what the federal guidance has said too, right? If you can do something, it's better to do something than to just abandon ship and do nothing because you can't do everything. So that's where we're going with it. I will probably be reaching out to find out who has paras that want to work, and I have seen some emails from you guys of paras that want to work, but that will be something we may just send out another little form that you can, an online form with the name of your para if they want to work, so that we can use them. Okay. Okay, so the last thing is class lists and transitions for next year. So last week I did a Zoom meeting with the Utah Parent Center, and our parents could log on and ask questions. And Amy Wyrick had prepared for me the most common questions from before the meeting. And then what we did is I spoke to all of those questions, and then they could ask questions after. And it went well. I was super nervous, but it went pretty well. Most of the questions were about, is anything going to happen this summer? And they had questions about testing. That will be another thing that we're working on. And I met with the Sykes this morning about which tests and which students we feel like we could start testing this summer safely. And so that, and our priority is initial eligibility, so that if students do end up qualifying, they can get access to services quickly. So that's our top priority. And then completing re-evals will be next. So that is something that we'll be able to do this summer too. So anyway, sorry. The other huge question that they asked on the Utah Parent Zoom is they are all the parents of students that are making transition to a new school. So either they were placed through some sort of process, through an LRE or whatever it is, or they're moving from pre-K to kinder, from 6th to 7th or 8th to 9th. They are very nervous because they can't go to the school, they can't take a tour of the school, they can't do any of those things. So you should have your lists now, and I'm speaking mostly to our self-contained teachers, resource teachers in elementary school. If you could reach out, I'm gonna lump you in with this group as far as the kindergarten, the pre-K kids that are going to be new to you in resource, because those parents are very nervous, as kindergarten parents tend to be. You should have your class list now. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to prioritize the kids that are new to your building and reach out to those families before we leave for the summer. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be an email. It could be a short Zoom appointment. It could be a phone call, but just reach out so they have a contact from the school where their kid is going to be served next year, and from the file holder saying, hey, you're going to be in my class. I wanted to introduce myself, blah, 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 something before next year, before the end of this year, that will help them feel less nervous. Resource teachers that are getting like new 7th graders or 9th graders, I realize that's a ton of kids. So that may not work for you. If you want to go, just send them all an email or something, and let them know how you can help them in the fall, that would be fine. Or if you, I don't know. I'm going to be working over the summer on some ideas of what we could do virtually to help families feel more comfortable. Like I'm considering that we go film tours of schools or something. I don't know. I'm off my rocker, but I'll figure it out. But in particular, if you are a self-contained teacher and you are getting kids new to your program, if you would reach out to those families before the year ends, I think that will go a long way in helping them feel better. Some parents are asking, like if I'm just going to use Backman as an example, if their child is moving up and is going to have a different co-teacher, they may be wondering about that. Our biggest priority is kids that are new to the building. And if you want to go above and beyond that, you are welcome to do that. But that's kind of what we're asking at this point right now. So I think that's all I have about the transition. The superintendent's latest guidance on getting access to your building is to work with your principal. So I am making principals aware that you have your extra days still, and that you need to be given access to complete the things you need to do in your files. Just remember to get in there and print off everything that you have done as far as paperwork goes during this time, and make sure it gets into the physical file. And then what we'd like you to do is take your transitioning files. So if you are a resource teacher in elementary school, pack up your 6th grade files in a box, label them 6th grade files for transfer, and work with your administrator to find a spot in the office where they can be kept safely, so that then we can go and pick them up. You don't need to divide them up by where they're going. Just put them all in one box and we will worry about getting them where they're going. That would be really helpful to us. So we've talked about reimbursements. We've talked about progress reports. We've talked about the summer stuff and ESY, and we've talked about transitioning students and transitioning files. So of course, you know me, we got to end with something. So this is kind of, I want to end on a light note, but it's a light note, but it's not. So sorry about that. So I have a song that's one of my favorite songs, and Jimmy Fallon has done a cover with The Roots and Brandon Urie from Panic at the Disco. And so I want to end with that, but I have never really paid attention to the lyrics of this song. And then I did this time, and it kind of hit me pretty hard. So the song is Under Pressure, the Queen David Bowie collaboration, the best song in the world. And And I was listening to this cover, and I guess maybe I could understand the words better or whatever, but one particular line kind of caught me this time, especially considering some of the impact, especially emotionally, that all of this has taken on a lot of people, including me. Because, you know, the song is not particularly a happy song, but I don't know, it resonates with me. But this line is what kind of stuck out because, you know, as you know, that at the beginning it talks about, you know, people who are on the fringes of night and under pressure and wanting to leave this world. And then it starts to get more hopeful towards the end and talks about love. And this is what it says: because love's such an old-fashioned word, and love dares you to care for the people on the edge of night. Sorry, I'm gonna get emotional now. And love dares you to change our way of caring about ourselves. This is ourselves under pressure. Wow, sorry. I didn't know this would happen. You probably did, but I thought I could control myself. There's been like no end, right, to the level of frustration people are probably experiencing. And then people have things happening in their families and their homes that are heavy, that have nothing to do with their online school or what to do about this hard IEP or any of those things. And it's just a lot. It's been a lot. But that really struck me. Love dares you to change our way of caring about ourselves. And that is something I hope we're learning during this time. It's something I'm not very good at and that I need to work on more. But sorry, I didn't mean for all of that to happen with the crying. But the song makes me happy, and now it almost takes on a whole new meaning after everything we've been through. So I want to end my little video with that song now, and just remember that thinking about you all the time. I'm worried all the time about our kids and their teachers and everybody. So just know that you are ever present in my mind. So anyway, here's my little heart, and here is Under Pressure. Hold on. Of course, now here we are, and I can't figure it out. Pressure pushing down on me, pressing down on you. No man has fallen under pressure that burns a building down, splits a family in two, puts people on streets. Eat up of it, eat up of it, eat it up, eat it up. That's okay. It's the terror of knowing what this world is about. Watching some good friends scream, let me out. Pray tomorrow gets me higher. Pressure on people on streets. Okay, can we give ourselves one more chance? Why can't we give love that one more chance? Why can't we give love, give love, give love? Love's such an old-fashioned word, and love dares you to care for the people on the edge of
Patricia.